Hello and welcome. I'm Naveed Hussain and you're watching The Power Game. In South Asia, war is not just fought on battlefields. It's shaped in narratives. Narratives that define enemies, narratives that mobilize nations, and sometimes narratives that decide elections. Over the past 2 decades, India has repeatedly portrayed itself as a victim of terrorism. But beneath the surface of grief, outrage, and retaliation lies a deeper, more complex story. A story where acts of violence are not just security failures, but political opportunities. From Pulwama in 2019 to Pahalgam in 2025, a pattern emerges that raises troubling questions. Has terrorism been weaponized not by militants, but by the state itself?
Repeated terrorist incidents, which are either because of lack of security and intelligence, and because of India's own very draconian actions in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, are blamed on Pakistan for political purposes. This has become a norm for the BJP, which is taken to otherizing not just Pakistan, but also Muslims inside India every time there's an electoral cycle. And this is very, very unfortunate. Not only unfortunate, it's also extremely dangerous given the circumstances around peace and stability in South Asia. I mean, these are two nuclear countries which have gone to almost, an almost war of 4 days. The risks are very real for a large conflagration or a larger conflict between both the countries.
While India was making these allegations against Pakistan, at the same time, all activities that I'm now referring to about India's violation of human rights in Kashmir, and earlier, of course, against the Christians in Mizoram, and even recently, therefore, at least for the last 3-4 years, the northeastern India has been disturbed as a result of communal fights between Christians and Hindus.
Unfortunately, India has been involved in blowing up the cases, obviously, as false flag operations, and to use them against a political background, obviously. This obviously not only lowers the credibility of Indian government, also breaches the trust between the two countries. Obviously, the people have to pay the price on both the sides of what happened and what followed Pahalgam.
By the end of 2018, the political landscape in India was shifting. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, once hailed as a transformative leader, was facing growing discontent. India's economy was slowing, unemployment had reached its highest level in decades, farmers were protesting across multiple states, and electorally, the signs were ominous. The ruling Bharatiya Janata Party suffered key defeats in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, states it had previously dominated. The narrative of invincibility was beginning to crack.
Results of the election showed to the BJP and to Modi that whenever they are in a difficult election, they can always rely on ultra-nationalism, on otherizing Pakistan, on creating a conflict situation with Pakistan to gain voters and to marginalize, their own communities into groups and take electoral benefit from that.
Modi used this or arranged this false flag operation to boost his election campaign, which was going to be held soon after. During the campaign, you have seen what kind of language he has used against Muslims, against Pakistan, and what kind of threats he had thrown at us.
For a leadership built on the image of strength, control, and decisive governance, this moment posed an existential political challenge. Then came February 14, 2019. A suicide bomber targeted a convoy of Indian paramilitary forces in Pulwama, killing 40 personnel. It was one of the deadliest attacks in Indian-occupied Kashmir in decades. But what followed was equally consequential. Within hours, the blame was firmly placed on Pakistan. Within days, the attack was reframed not just as a tragedy, but as a call to action. Television studios transformed into war rooms. Anchors demanded revenge.
Within minutes, within hours, they put the blame on Pakistan. Incident took place in a remote area, and all of a sudden, they received message from their mothers, from their gods, that Pakistan has done it.
Political leaders echoed the same message. India must respond.
Indian media has been exposed, and frankly, the Indian government has also been exposed recently in terms of the ludicrous accusations and oftentimes accusations without any grounding in fact against Pakistan. It's been highlighted by the international media, it's been pointed out by diplomats across the world.
Public grief was channeled into collective anger, and anger into political momentum. On February 26, 2019, Indian fighter jets violated Pakistan airspace to carry out airstrikes in Balakot. The Indian government claimed it had struck a major militant training camp. Pakistan responded within hours, launching its own aerial operation and shooting down Indian fighter jets. A captured Indian pilot became the face of a rapidly escalating crisis.
Indian military completely failed in achieving any objectives when it came to Balakot. Pakistan's response was resolute, and it was, as we say, quid pro quo plus. And the Indians had to back off.
Militarily, the situation remained ambiguous. Independent verification of India's claim was limited. But politically, clarity was not required. The narrative had already been constructed. Balakot was presented as a decisive victory, a demonstration of strength, resolve, and leadership.
They were able to sell to their own public through an insular media, through an insular, neurotic sort of prime-time television news, that somehow this was a success. And a large part of that was Prime Minister Modi, right after Balakot, going to all of these election rallies with pictures of many of those people, soldiers from Pulwama at the background of his rallies. So he tried to sell it very hard, and I think it was successful.
India's activities, its own credentials on various issues have been so badly sullied that it does not carry much weight when it now talks of terrorist activities being perpetrated from Pakistani soil.
If it is not politically motivated, India would have been willing to cooperate with Pakistan for a mutual investigation or offering some proofs or some obligation to conduct a neutral inquiry. It didn't do that. So I think it's sad to know that our 1.7 billion people become hostage to a politically motivated agenda. So that should not only be carried out, but if that happens, obviously Pakistan could do only what it did, and to come forward to obviously offer our contribution, offer our willingness to cooperate with Indian government to find out if it was truth. Because as I believe it was not based on the truth, and that is why the Indian government was absolutely reluctant to cooperate with Pakistan and reach a consensus or a logical conclusion of this situation.
In an election year, perception mattered more than prescience, and perception had decisively shifted. In May 2019, India went to the polls. The result defied earlier projection. The Bharatiya Janata Party returned to power with an even stronger mandate.
Since Prime Minister Modi has taken over, it's not the Nehruvian India, it is the current majoritarian India that has taken over, and the Their treatment towards Muslims, towards Sikhs, and towards Christians has been widely recorded. And because of all these activities, I think it took the sting, the bite out of India's attacks on Pakistan, because the people who were alleging all these did not come, as they say, in law with clean hands.
If you look at Modi's stance, where he and his foreign minister, they claim that Pakistan is perpetrator of terrorism. And terrorism and talks and trade and water things cannot move together. These are all excuses. These are all allegations to pursue a specific agenda, to isolate Pakistan diplomatically, destroy our economy completely.
The election was no longer about economic performance or governance deficit. It had become a referendum on nationalism, on security, on strength. Pulwama and Balakot had not just altered the political discourse, they had reshaped the electoral outcome. In the years that followed, a different dimension of India's security strategy began to surface. One that extended far beyond its borders. Allegation emerged of targeted killing of dissidents abroad, particularly among Sikh activists. Canada's Prime Minister publicly accused Indian government of involvement in the assassination of Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Canada has declared its deep concerns to the top intelligence and security officials of the Indian government. Last week at the G20, I brought them personally and directly to Prime Minister Modi in no uncertain terms. Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty. It is contrary to the fundamental rules by which free, open, and democratic societies conduct themselves. In the strongest possible terms, I continue to urge the government of India to cooperate with Canada to get to the bottom of this matter.
If you look at the transnational killings or the attempts to do transnational killings, this is a network that has spread across many countries and continents. So we have the killing in Canada, we have attempted killing in the US. Both of those instances, there is ample intelligence and evidence now in the public domain that links Indian officials, the Indian embassy in those countries directly with those who were planning or who carried out those attacks.
For a country that had long portrayed itself as a victim of terrorism, these accusations marked a dramatic reversal. India was now being seen not as a target, but as a potential perpetrator. April 2025, gunmen attacked tourists in Pahalgam, a scenic region deep inside Indian-occupied Kashmir. The brutality shocks the nation, but the response follows a familiar script. Blame is assigned within minutes without evidence. Media outlets amplify the narrative. Calls for retaliation dominate the discourse. Yet critical questions remain unanswered.
The Indian government blamed Pakistan right after, probably 10 minutes after the incident. The Indian government came with the official stance that Pakistan was involved in this. And I used to say even in those days that if Indian intelligence obviously is so smart and so proactive that they could reach us within 10 minutes, why couldn't they reach us 10 minutes before the incident? They should have identified and obviously prevented the incident. So that itself shows that it was a scripted kind of manifested, pre-planned, and obviously a politically motivated agenda. That is why the Indian government failed to cooperate, obviously absolutely reluctant to give any evidences, and was not agreeing to a joint inquiry or investigation, which we offered that we can do a mutually trusted third-party investigation, which Indians did not agree. So that itself speaks that it was not an intelligence failure. If intelligence failure could have happened, obviously they would have accepted it their end. So I think that they found it easy to blame and stage manage all this incident.
On Pahalgam, there's a lot more questions that arise about how that incident took place, who were the perpetrators, why intelligence information was lacking. This was, of course, a location very far away from, the line of control, for example, deep inside occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And it was also reported that the location was, cordoned off for security reasons. So there are many questions that arise from both incidents about intelligence failure and also culpability, I would say, of administration and security officials within occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
Pakistan wanted to be part of the investigation. They never allowed it. What does it mean? That they are very quick to level allegations, but very hesitant for some reasons, secret to them but known to us, that their allegations are baseless, they are fabricated, they are concocted.
In the absence of transparent investigation, speculation fills the vacuum. And once again, tragedy becomes a catalyst for political and diplomatic escalation.
In terms of diplomacy and policy making, it's not that big of a challenge because eventually countries and diplomats rely on their own sources of information. I think one great example of this is the losses incurred by India in May during the Pahalgam, right after the Pahalgam incident, the 4-day conflict. I mean, the Indians tried very hard to push a narrative that they had decimated Pakistan somehow, or that they had, and they have a larger network, they've got resources, it's a big country, so they have links with global media as well, links in global think tanks. So they really tried very hard to push that narrative, but it failed and it flopped because those people who are at the helm of affairs in DC or London or Paris know exactly, how many aircraft from which country were downed during that conflict.
India's leaders made to be realized that such an irresponsible act can lead to obviously an even more disaster effect. If Pakistan had believed any of the missile to be obviously nuclear tipped, we may have responded with the nuclear option. So fortunately, it did not happen. But it cannot be guaranteed for the future that every time the other side would be sane, logical, and sensible.
To understand the present, one must revisit the past, because the pattern did not begin with Pulwama, nor did it end with Pahalgam. From Pulwama to Pahalgam, from Samjhota Express to Chhattisgarh, India has repeatedly been accused of using acts of violence not just as security crises, but as instrument of political and diplomatic messaging.
After having attacked Bahawalpur and some other places, Muridke and other places in Pakistan, the Prime Minister of India says that we were after the terrorism and how come Pakistani military attacked us? So what would an Indian Prime Minister expect? If you breach the sovereignty of a country like Pakistan, what you said in the previous question, we are nuclear power. We owe it to our people, obviously. We do not want to go aggressive. We do not want to impose our thrust on any other country. But being a sovereign country, irrespective we were nuclear or not nuclear, We will not let anything become new normal in the eyes of our enemy or any neighboring country, may it be any side, to breach our obviously sovereignty, interfere into our obviously public life, and cause a destruction of human and material loss. So we had to come back very harsh on that, and that is why we wanted to teach lesson to the enemy that you cannot make anything new normal, irrespective of the time and day of your choosing. And this is what we did.
March 2000, in Chhattisangpura village of Anantnag in Indian-occupied Kashmir, gunmen lined up Sikh villagers and shot dead 35 of them at point-blank range. The massacre coincided with the visit of US President Bill Clinton, instantly drawing global attention. India quickly blamed militant groups with alleged links to Pakistan, but questions soon emerged.
The belief in New Delhi is that it doesn't matter if an accusation is true or not, or if there is even a modicum of acceptability in any accusation. They will jump the gun and be the first to accuse and bring out all kinds of facts, with whether they may be right or wrong, onto their media platform to paint Pakistan as a terrorist supporting country, which is absolutely not the reality of what these incidents are.
Over there, it is a small village in Jammu and Kashmir region, mostly populated by Sikh community, which have their own identity. Any outsider, say Pakistani, say a foreigner, would have been identified easily.
Independent inquiries by Indian right groups challenged the official narrative, suggesting the involvement of irregular pro-state actors instead. Days later, 5 civilians were killed in another Kashmiri village and labeled as militants. When local identified them, widespread protest erupted. Security forces opened fire on protesters, killing 7 more.
Pakistan's been quite successful diplomatically in trying to explain its position, and it's been helped to a very large extent by the policies of Prime Minister Modi.
Pakistan has suffered from terrorism. The world knows about it. Pakistan has launched a massive, huge anti-terrorist campaign within its own borders, and also face the wrath of terrorists coming from neighboring countries, including India. So there is a contradiction when India put the blame on us as a country harboring terrorism. World knows that we are not terrorists. Sometimes they get deluded, but most of the time it is very easy for us to let our friends, let the world see through the false allegation of India.
Over time, these incidents have come to reflect a troubling pattern. Crisis, immediate blame, media amplification, political advantage.
It is the larger infrastructure that has been funded by and supported by Hindutva and groomed by an ideology of frankly hate, if I may say so, which is supported by a large media which is no longer independent in India, and a lot of voices on social media and on mainstream media which jump the gun. And it is those networks, those journalists, those sources that are used to accuse Pakistan right after an attack.
The only way to have a peaceful environment across the border in both the countries is to try and resolve meaningfully this dispute that has bedeviled relations between our two countries.
From Chhattisangpura to Pulwama to Pahalgam, the question remains, Are these isolated failures of Indian government or part of a larger strategy where terrorism becomes a tool of statecraft?